What is up, peeps? We are finally back with the podcast on this channel. Yes, it is me and Hunter for the first ever one. We did this years back on Esports Talk, and we wanted to bring back the podcast for all of you, and we're calling it GWRLD or GWRLD Media because that's the company that me and Hunter started, and Hunter's going to tell you guys why we're calling it GWRLD.
Well, I'm probably not even going to tell you why we're calling it GWRLD, but I am going to tell you this is definitely our first time that we've recorded this. We did not try to record it yesterday at all. This is super successful. We're really tech savvy and we know exactly what we're doing. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I didn't mess up my camera the first time through. We haven't talked about these topics already once, but yes, in case you guys didn't catch us years ago when we did this, the idea being that if you can't catch our weekly videos for news, it's a way to compile all of those stories out there. We banter back and forth, talk about all of the biggest topics, and just have a fun time reading comments. Certainly on the podcast, we'll be going through comments, responding to all of you. So we hope you guys will enjoy once a week where we break down all of the biggest topics in esports gaming and streaming. And we want to have a place for that here on the channel.
I think you'll also be able to get a little bit more opinion out of us in this format. I know when I talk a lot, I'll just eventually you end up sharing a little bit more about what our like insights or opinions or thoughts are that we normally don't convey as much in the normal channel videos. And so maybe just more of a forum to hear conversation and hear what people think about topics. Hopefully you guys are interested in.
Yeah, definitely a way to see more of our personality aside from 5 to 8 minute videos out there. But we hope you guys all enjoy episode number 1. Make sure to leave a comment down below and a like if you guys do enjoy the format. You'll be seeing this hopefully every week that we possibly can. And we got some big topics this week because we're coming off a crazy one. And we're just going to lead with the storm here because one of the biggest topics over the last couple of weeks has not only been Dr. Disrespect and his admissions / allegations and ban and whatever you want to say about that. It has also been a response from Nickmercs on all of this. One of the more outspoken guys who has now announced several times he is completely disassociating himself with Dr. Disrespect after all the recent controversy.
I think it's been a big change that I personally wasn't expecting. I know I mentioned before, if you had told me 2 or 3 years ago that this is a situation that you would end up in with Nick and Dr. Disrespect, I never would have guessed any of the number of things that have happened in the past 2 years. I mean, just seeing where they were with Call of Duty, with Apex, and then slowly the timeline that has evolved for both Nick and Doc have been crazy. And I feel like they both kind of find each other now on that harder right side of the internet. But they're also still both very separate. Like, as you're saying, Nick now wants nothing to do with Doc, but they're in like similar sides of the internet, I guess is what I'm trying to get at, but very different.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the 4 to 5 years ago. Just imagine where these streamers were. You were talking about maybe the tail end of peak Fortnite into the Call of Duty and Warzone era that was. And like for everything that's happened between both these guys, obviously very different stories, but we never would have guessed that here is where Nickmercs is. Once, I would say, and I think you would agree, one of the bigger gamer streamers of all time, now has been not really gaming. He's finally back in Apex, but certainly has had his number of controversies. And then Doc, between 4 to 5 years ago, with the height of this Twitch ban drama, and now we finally find out the reason behind it. I don't think anyone could have predicted this for them. But speaking more to Nickmercs, who apparently there's 2 sides of the internet. A lot of people out there surprised by his take against the Doc, and others saying that he's a bad friend for calling out Doc.
I think this just goes to show, for me personally, how much you can't trust the internet at this point. Because if you, again, I'm going to look back in time, but even a year ago, like before stuff was happening, I would have assumed that they were pretty close friends in this situation. Like I would have said, oh yeah, Doc, Tim, Nickmercs, these guys are all close buddies. They're all friends. But then all this happens and suddenly we have Nick saying, well, we're actually not that close. Like we're not really friends.
I mean, that makes sense to me though. I mean, like, I don't think anyone was not many people. I don't think anyone that I knew was guessing this was going to happen with Doc and everything that went down these past few weeks. I'm not surprised by the disassociation of, like, at the end of the day, these guys played video games together online. Even Nick had said in his now several statements, we have a couple of videos on this because he's talked about this at length about the Doc situation and how he felt about it and his complete approach to the situation. He's talked about it for a long, long time. But like, he's met the Doc a couple of times. They've rarely texted. So like, that's not necessarily, that's like an acquaintance in the industry, you know? So I personally would agree. Like, I don't see them. I understand where he's coming from when he's like, we're not really friends, you know?
Yeah, and I think it does just go to show a little bit of this like perspective that for me, Nick was a surprise in how he's reacted to Dr. Disrespect, not because I think Nick is like a terrible person or anything like that, but just because again, side of the internet he's on, it would make sense almost for him to support Doc. Like I feel like his audience would have really rallied around it and been like all for supporting Doc in this situation if Nick had come out and said, oh, well, there's no direct proof of this, like how everyone's just trying to cancel him, like that kind of vibe. Nick would have been supported in that, knowing how the infam has been lately. But I think he surprised me a lot, pleasantly, I would add, in coming straight out and being like, hey, Doc, I don't care about this legality thing that you're focusing on, because in Doc's response, he's all about nothing I did was illegal. At any point, like I was cleared, there was no illegal action. Yes, I said minor, but like, did you check the age of consent in the state? You know, like all these like really small like semantics, technicalities. And Nick just coming straight out and saying, I don't care about any of that. I care about the morality side of it, which I respected a lot. And I think I even brought up as well, Dr. Lupo was someone that I did expect his response. Responded very similarly to Nick, but two very different personalities that now end up agreeing with how they're treating the Doc situation.
Yeah, and I think we've also spoken about this. A lot of responses out there were like, dang, like when your least favorite streamer or your most hated streamer says something that you agree with, because Nick has been very divisive, been very vocal about his opinions over the last several years now, and he's kind of found himself, and he still has diehard supporters, right? He's built the MFAM for a reason and does a great job, and I still love when he plays video games competitively. Like it's always fun to watch, but he certainly has found himself in a different side of the internet than he was used to 4 to 5 years ago. And so with those vocal opinions, I think he's found out that you can't please everybody, because, you know, when it came to the TwitchCon and COVID stuff, when it came to the Kick stuff, when it came to the gambling stuff, the Call of Duty controversy, all of the Doc stuff, he's found out that you can't please everyone. And he's just sticking to his guns. He is saying how he feels. And to a certain degree, I do respect that, especially when it comes to a situation like this. Like it's not easy. Like he knows he's going to say things now, and no matter what, he's going to receive hate. And for those reasons, he also has plenty of haters. So at the end of the day, like you said as well, he doesn't care about the legal side. He also says Nick's own words, Doc admitted to all of this. And also in Nick's own words, the line that he drew was that this was a 40-plus-year-old man who was inappropriately messaging a much, much younger person. And that was it. Like that was the line for Nick. He drew the line in the sand, and he's no longer going to associate with him. And so I guess we wait and see, like, are there streamers that will go over that line? Will they cross that line for Doc, you know?
Yeah, I think, and even something else he said, he didn't just say 4-year-old. He said a 4-year-old man with a wife and a kid, which I think is super important. And hey, shout out to me, different than esports talk days. I'm still married and I have a kid. So, you know, humble brag. So I got to relate to this a little bit in that looking at how, I mean, Lupo, Nick, and Doc, all three of these guys are married, have kids, right? And so I feel like I can look at their positions as Lupo and Nick and say, like, I absolutely agree with these guys, because you can't tell me when I was 10 years old and my dad was 40, if he had been talking to a 16 or 17-year-old, like, that's the weirdest thing that I can possibly, like, there's no excuse for it in any way to be like messaging a minor in that situation. So seeing how they're responding to this makes a lot of sense to me. And I don't know, man. I think I was just taking them, like, I know it sounds bad, but taking it back with like the respect I have for Nick because of that, which reminded me of like how he used to be almost a little bit. Like Nick used to be one of our favorite streamers, same as Dr. Disrespect. Like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, however long back at Esports Talk, I feel like if you had asked us some of our top names, it would have been Doc and Nick. And so it's refreshing on Nick's side to see like this take. Also refreshing to see him back in Apex. And I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but
and Ninja, my guy.
Oh yeah, well yeah,
I was
super
a big
Ninja fan.
I'm a Ninja. I got accused in the office of being a Ninja fanboy, but I know we ranted a bit. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to see. I just 4 to 5 years ago, like you said, we could not have pictured being here. So I wonder where we're going to be 4 to 5 years from now. And for me, it also, last thing, just it's like a newfound respect for streamers out there who kind of just stick to their guns and like stay out of this stuff, because it's growing increasingly difficult now to not find yourself in these weird waters. So it kind of gives yourself more respect for the streamers who you never really talk about their drama. They just like to play video games and stay in their lane, you know?
Yeah, so next up we have a story that really blew up, even kind of into mainstream a little bit, not too much, but a lot of people caught wind of it because big Twitter accounts were sharing it. We have Valkyrae, who, yes, I'm saying her name right,
Valkyrae.
Not Valkyrae, as
Valkyrae.
Jake Sucky likes to say. But she was in the Minecraft movie just as a quick cameo. I don't know what the cameo was. Obviously, I don't think anyone does at this point. But she was asked on Jason the Ween's video
if she had ever had any arsehole experiences with celebrities. And for some reason, god dang it, of all the people you could name, I think we could say one of the bigger actors in the entire world, and someone who is generally perceived as a pretty positive reputation, right?
Yeah, and I think I would just be scared, to be honest with you, to like call out any A-list actor. I don't care how big of a streamer I am or YouTuber or whatever. I don't think I would ever go after an A-lister, and especially not Jason Momoa of all people, I feel like. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe she didn't expect it to blow up the way it did. I would say it went mainstream. If you search, there's articles, there's tweets, there's TikToks all around this. So I would say it certainly went viral, and maybe she didn't expect it to. But now, like a learning lesson, you're Ray. Like, you can't just like talk about these kind of things, even just off the cuff, especially about one of the bigger celebrity actors out there. But her actual accusation was also met with some flack because obviously she's a third party in this. She wasn't necessarily directly overseen. She kind of says it like she saw it from afar, and it was a conversation she wasn't directly involved in, which I can understand why people would be upset about that, right?
Yeah, and just to give everyone context, just because I forgot to kind of in the beginning here, this tweet, just from one account, has 20 million views. And I'm just going to read the quote off from the video. They're just taking...
Jason saw it, dude. Jason definitely saw it.
Yeah, they're taking the quote. And the quote is, "I saw him mistreat some of the crew. It was pretty disappointing. It was after a very intense scene, so maybe he was still in character. He was just really mad at them that they weren't doing something right, like setting up the shot. He was just really angry and yelling. I was like, this is not a good work environment. I would not be happy working under those conditions."
Some of my favorite replies to this were right away, people were like, what the frick kind of intense scene are you getting out of a Minecraft movie? And the only images we've seen of Jason so far from the freaking movie are him in like a blazing, like hot pink leather jacket. So like, like if there's video of this out there, Jason's in trouble for sure.
There's one of these replies I'm looking at right now says, dude probably got pissed he didn't have enough ore to craft a full armor set. Which, yeah, I mean, you just never know what's going on a movie set. But I think one of my main, she said a lot of crazy things in there, right? Like she said, talking about using crazy words, mistreating some of the crew.
Yeah.
Angry and yelling, not a good work environment. I would not be happy working under those conditions. It's just a lot of like really, I would say big words, really accusatory words that like, I feel like
the internet runs with.
Yeah, the internet's going to take that. And you say that and people are going to assume that he's a super abusive person on set and one of the worst people to work with. And it goes a long way. Of course, we don't know the reality of the situation. That could all be true.
She could be right. She could be right.
Yeah, Jason Momoa could be the worst person of all time.
I hope
feel
not.
Like you're right. I feel like maybe we would have. He's been enough stuff by now with enough people. I feel like maybe we would have heard rumblings about this before Valkyrae was on set for a cameo. Like someone would have spoke out. But regardless, I also think it's important to acknowledge, like taking the flip side of it, that she probably saw something without context. I think you mentioned this. This could have been a movie that they were working on for a year, and she suddenly comes on for a quick cameo. He's been with this crew for a long time.
It's
They're
a
all
sixth
close.
take of this simple scene, and Jerry can't get the freaking light rigging correct. He's like, Jerry, my man, we've been over this. And
right, like who knows what it was, and like there's so much context behind these things that she could have missed, and I feel like it's just, in my opinion, maybe safer not to say anything, but that could also be ignorant. I don't know.
Yeah, and again, like we'll never know, right? And I feel bad for both sides. Maybe just I think the smarter thing was just not to say it, or to follow up by saying, and like to cover her tracks and to realize a situation that, and again, maybe Again, she maybe did not know this was going to get 20 million views on a single tweet, let alone all the other ones out there. That's possible. But now you know the power of your voice. And maybe next time, if you're going to call out a celebrity in a work environment, you got to follow it up by saying, but I also was not directly involved. Like or
Right.
maybe do your due diligence when you're at the movie set in that cameo moment, walk over and before you're willing to talk about a situation afterwards. But I don't know. Maybe we're just being naive, right? Like maybe I would say stupid stuff like this in her situation. At the end of the day, I can't see Jason being that guy. I hope it's not true. And if Ray and Jason ever have to meet in person, that might be a little awkward.
I don't know. Hopefully there's a redemption video, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Also, I know I said this on our first time recording this, but if you guys have ever seen the series C or Scene with Jason Momoa, great show.
It is C, but also I'm not surprised that you're the guy who would pay for Apple TV. That's insane.
Yeah, I have friends who let me borrow that because I can't charge that on the company card. All right, idiot.
This guy, friends, crazy.
Oh, just go hack up along, dude. Now, of course, we got some drama for a story out there. In case you guys been following the World Series of Warzone, they had some crazy drama for their $1 million event over this past week. We had a camera guy there. Thanks to Hunter for coordinating that one. It was a fun time, but instantly early on, if you guys were watching the broadcast, you probably noticed a reoccurring theme of resets and tech issues and tech pauses and PC swaps. At one point or another, tons of players were tweeting about this, even just people in attendance, with matches taking up to an hour to complete. And while me and Hunter were actually at Rocket League or a Fortnite event, we were trying to watch the stream, and every time we checked or our camera guy texted us, he was like, we're still waiting.
I think it was one of the more, we weren't there again, but one of the more disappointing events that I've seen, especially after being at Esports World Cup, right?
Yeah. I mean, for anyone who didn't know, we were at Esports World Cup during Warzone week where the Falcons also won, and it was a sick setup. And they had their tech issues early on, but they definitely got it sorted like pretty handily for how many players were there.
Yeah, I think it's just it might just be, hey man, they got Saudi money, they can do whatever they want. It was a sick setup. It was insane. Like there was a ton of people on site running this thing. They probably spent who knows how much money on that week alone. But looking at World Series of Warzone, I think it's just difficult when a lot of people view Warzone as the thing that saved Call of Duty, right? And even like the game casually, especially like how many more people play Warzone casually than multiplayer casually?
Warzone killed Call of Duty multiplayer. How about that take, Hunter?
Sorry. But it might have just saved it, right? As a whole. And so I think it's difficult because people really want to see, especially since a lot of the streamers are also Warzone streamers. There's no just COD multiplayer streamers anymore or creators.
So true.
And so like people want to see these kind of competitions do well. People are like rooting for their favorite streamers. You have Aiden, you have Huskers, you got Joe, you got Breadman, you got all these personalities competing in World Series of Warzone, and people are excited about the game, even if it has its problems. And then you're met with an unwatchable experience, I would say. I mean, if I had been only watching that, if we weren't at Rocket League,
I would have turned it off probably.
Oh yeah, I absolutely. They had like hours in between matches because of the tech issues, and so I would have been done with it for sure. So it's just a little bit disappointing, but regardless, some of the issues that they ran into were pretty wild too.
Yeah, and just a quick word on that. It was the culminating event of the year. So, devil's advocate, it's never easy to put on an event with 120 players. Like, evidently, you're going to push come to shove, you're going to have issues. So it cannot be easy, but I just expected a bit more at a World Series of Warzone. And hopefully they take this note going forward and we can have a rebound here as well. And they got, like you said, big personalities. Everyone's going to be watching, especially with CDL versus Warzone guys. Debate always ongoing. And speaking of which, one of the bigger tech issues was Biffle, one of the better players in the entire tournament, finding out that he had an inferior graphics card compared to everyone else and had to get his PC swapped live on stage, which you don't see in esports, man. Like you don't see a mistake like that very often. And I get it. Luckily it's Warzone. We'll look past it, but that was wild.
I just, if you had seen that in any other game, and I do want to throw a bone right here just to the workers, you know, like the people working the event, they're probably all trying their best, right? Like these people don't
100%.
deserve hate personally. But it's still like some things were probably pretty easy to avoid. And I don't know whose mistake it was down the line that got Biffle, of all people, to have a worse graphics card.
Unfortunately,
Luckily, they still won, dude. If they had not won, like if they had been performing poorly before that, I feel like the whole thing would have erupted. People would have been really upset about the situation because these are the guys who are known, I think, undisputably as the best in Warzone, the best trio in Warzone right now.
I know undisputably is a really fun word for you to say with your Carolina accent. Undisputably.
Disputable. Yeah, man.
Yeah, but they go on to win it. I would, lucky for sure. I think it's also fortunate that it was Biffle though, because if it happened to like a lesser player or a team that was, in contention for a top 20 or a top 10 placement, I would also feel even more bad because like the Falcons were evidently going to win from the very start. They were very much the touted favorites, especially coming off World Cup and the rest of the year. And they go on to dominate the match point format. Eventually they actually hit that 150 point threshold. Once you break that 150 point threshold, you have to win a game to win the tournament. And they did just that. It was great. I mean, I love all the trash talk they're doing, dude. Like I legit, I love it. I think it's great for Call of Duty versus Warzone, and I hope they keep talking to smack because COD guys don't even think they believe what they're saying.
I think they're doing a good job, probably the best they can. I think a lot of the CDL guys just don't really care because
not at all.
we've been the COD guys for so long. Like, who cares what these Warzone dudes say that came out of nowhere? But
it's the same guys talking smack.
They're putting the pressure on, and luckily for them, I would say they keep winning. So they can keep talking trash, but they keep bringing up this whole, could Warzone players compete in the CDL? Could the CDL compete in Warzone? We've agreed on this before. I think CDL players have a much better chance in Warzone just because they 100%. Know COD mechanics. All they have to do is spend a little time, learn rotations, and then they could probably outgun anyone. But if you throw, some of these Warzone guys into a multiplayer respawn mode, it's going to be a lot harder for them to keep up with people who are doing that all day, every day.
Yeah, and Hunter really wants to see a CDL team pick up Warzone pros, and I totally agree. Like we got Sick. Falcons coming in with a supposed roster that nobody likes, so why not have a different org come in with Warzone guys? Like at this point, all's fair in love and maybe some war.
That would be filthy, dude. We've already said it, but if Gentlemates could just pop on, the rumor that they might be entering the CDL, taking LAG's spot, finally, by the way, if they just brought in 4 Warzone, just bring in these 3 guys into CDL, and then they can pick up whatever 4th they want.
And have them still compete in Warzone and prove that you can do both at the same time. Like, obviously, that would be incredibly difficult to do. But, I think that would ruffle so many COD head feathers. But I would still love to see it.
Yeah, so Falcons dominating. I do quickly just want to mention one more tech thing, which was that PC restart we didn't mention. That's just a little bit messy. One of the players who...
Clobson, yes.
Yeah, people seem to like, which whether they like him or not, unfortunate. But there was a live PC restart in the middle of a game, and there was no restart. So I feel like the Warzone scene as a whole competitively just has a bit of a learning curve in terms of how to run these events and how it's going to go.
Yeah, and again, whenever it comes to a battle royale, 120 players, unfortunately for Clobson, sorry if I mispronounced that, going into a last match, they are literally restarting his PC and they still don't reset the match. That can't happen. So a lot of people call that out too. Competitive integrity, a thing of question for World Series of Warzone or Warzone in general, but it's definitely spicy, and we'll see what happens next for future Warzone comps.
Okay, next up we have a topic that I think was pretty surprising to both of us. Again, we were at Rocket League when this happened. Something I never would have guessed was going to happen as well, which is Tenz retiring from professional Valorant. Just initial thoughts, Jake. What do you think?
Crazy, man. Just like you, I did not see this one coming. Apparently, it was in the books for a while for Tenz. I think a lot of people would agree that part of it makes sense, but also the timing of it, when I first saw it, I was like, whoa. I think there was also an agreement by journalists out there to not list this story or put it out early, which is awesome. But yeah, sheer surprise, first reaction. And I was like, well, that's a huge loss for esports.
Yeah, as a whole, I mean, I remember when Valorant first started. It's crazy that it's been so long now. What is it, 4 or 5 years ago?
4 or 5 years, yeah.
I remember Sentinels were the team back then, and Tenz was a part of that. That was back when he was with Cloud9, right, originally?
Yeah.
And
got out of jail, baby.
He was on loaner to Sentinels, some weird situation. And Sentinels ended up being back when Valorant started, the meta was just like a fragging meta, and Tenz was like the sickest jet player, like one of the best uppers in the game, and so it was a really legendary season for them, and Tenz just exploded out of it, and that's coming out of retirement from CS, right?
Yeah, and he had a short stint in CS. He was always known as the aim guy. And then obviously a rival FPS to Counter-Strike comes up, just conveniently timed for Tenz's rise. And with his blow up as a personality and just like as that, he was that aim guy, he was like, I see a new career opportunity. And he took it and he wrote it about as good as any esport player possibly could, not just as a player, but also as a presence and a personality. Like you will not see many people like Tenz as a core a fundamental piece of the rise of Valorant. And just the tailing off of CS into a rival FPS. Like that's a crazy storyline, man.
And speaking of him exploiting like that, of course, you also have his fiance, Kaide, also exploding, which is crazy. Yeah. I mean, like those are the two biggest names I would say in Valorant. Obviously, you could maybe argue that Tarek is bigger than Tenz on the creator side. Maybe, like, I don't really know now that Tenz is full time how it's going to compare. But Kaide definitely the biggest female creator in Valorant. And so seeing this transition, I think, makes sense. We've gone over this with a lot of different creators across scenes, whether you look at Nicewig in Apex or Scump in Call of Duty. You see these pro players who are extremely well known in their game, and they look over at the content side of things that's doing pretty decently for them, and they see a much longer timeline, a much longer lifespan in that role, and so it makes more sense to them just to go ahead and invest in that.
Yeah, it just makes complete sense when you see so many people before him who have done it. And I shouldn't say so many, there are very few of them, but they do so well. You got the Tark and Ninjas, XQC, Shroud, so on and so forth. So it does make perfect sense for him. And it's also going to be cool to see him dabble into other games out there too. Obviously, he's a big FPS fan, so seeing him hop back on CS already has been very fun for me. Like you said as well, going to stick it out with Valorant, but hopefully other games too. And I hope that him and Kaide will remain a strong presence in gaming. And he's already also talked about some up-and-coming games that Hunter's been covering a lot over on Deadlock Intel, and Tenz actually shared his recent thoughts about Deadlock as an esport. He does like the game, but he says because it's a MOBA, it's got an extra lane, extra player, there's definitely complications there that it says it's went viral for saying it's maybe not the most optimal of esports from a viewership perspective.
And the internet, I feel bad for talking about this because I feel like most people agree that he was very much wrong about this in this situation. Because it's just like,
he was correct.
There's only so many esports that make sense. There's only a few. Like we said, there's like 3 that make sense. You got Rocket League,
agree with Tenz,
CS, and GeoGuessr, right? Like what else is going to be super? You're going to walk in your first few games and you're automatically going to know what's going on from a viewer perspective.
I agree with Tenz.
Why?
Because I am Tenz, dude. He reminds me of me.
It's just so much. Speaking of, he was actually playing with Shroud, and this is just a slight little left turn here for just a second. Is he
for your
ADD
the next
Shroud? Yeah, is he gonna be the next Shroud? What's up? People are asking.
Whoa, that's actually a wild, not really wild take. What do you guys, I think it's possible. Yeah, for sure. I think it's possible because they are so similar in their reserved like nature, but they're also so cracked at games, and Tenz could be that next generational talent, and showcases a lot of, even some would say better skill than Shroud. So yeah, he certainly could be. Yeah.
A lot of people had just been comparing them in comments, especially as they are both playing Deadlock a little bit. I do think Tenz will hop around and probably not stick to it like Shroud does. But regardless, I think it's just the take is just not really fair. I don't think when you play a game like Valorant that is extremely confusing. There's that one super famous clip of all the abilities going off, and it just makes no sense. I think One
There's many of those
reacted to it and was like freaking out about like who knows what's really going on. And you can do that with almost any game. You can go look at League of Legends. You can go look at Dota, and no one has any idea what's going on if you don't play the game consistently.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think I understand both sides because you make a really good counter argument. But I will say from Tenz's point of view, he has learned and mastered Valorant, so he understands what you said. Valorant is a very hard game to understand if you don't play it, but he has Valorant down. He has other FPS and shooter games down because for the most part, shooters are pretty basic, right? You can look at Call of Duty, CS, all these shooters and pretty much understand it more than you can a Dota or a League of Legends. So from Tenz's point of view, being more of an FPS guy, heading into a game like Deadlock, I understand his sentiment being like, yo, if you don't play this game, you ain't gonna get it. Because he's right when he says that, but I understand where you're coming from. That could be said for like a lot of games out there nowadays. If you don't play these games, you ain't gonna get them.
I mean, we go back to League of Legends to play ARAM every once in a while, and there's 3 new characters, and I already have no idea what's going on in the game.
True.
So it's just difficult. No matter who you are, no matter what game you play, it's always confusing from outside looking in. I think Deadlock has a lot of potential. It's super early in its life cycle, and Valve is behind it, so hopefully they're not going to... I mean, they have one of the most simple games in esports, Counter-Strike, and one of the most complicated games in esports in Dota 2. So who knows where Deadlock is going to lie.
I'm going to let that one go because we have a time limit here. But yeah, anyway, Tenz likes the game of Deadlock, does not see it as an optimal esport. Do you guys agree or disagree? Will you be giving Deadlock a chance? And a game that we gave a chance that is now being sued. It's finally happened, Hunter, and it's happening way later than need be. But viral news out there as apparently Palworld and their parent company are being sued by Nintendo in a crazy story.
Yeah, so it says the lawsuit seeks an injunction against infringement and compensation for damages on the grounds that Palworld, a game developed and released by the defendant, Pocket Pair, infringes multiple patent rights. Nintendo will continue to take necessary actions against any infringement of its intellectual property rights, including the Nintendo brand itself, to protect the intellectual properties it has worked hard to establish over the years.
And then we had a response from Palworld, who said they're going to investigate and try and find out where the frick they infringed upon, but they're going to keep on updating the game, Hunter.
I mean, do you think they infringed? Let's be real.
Okay, so from the headlines that I read, they purposely said this. They were like, coined the Pokemon with guns, or dubbed Pokemon with guns by fans, all right? We did that. All right. Did they know what they were doing? Yes. But we gave it the name. All right. And because of Nintendo's past when it comes to esports, I am biased against them. Do I think they might be entitled to some sort of compensation from a game that made $500 million in a very short span of time? Maybe. What do you think they infringed? Because there was so much back and forth, man. There's a lot of specific details that are probably going to come out, but I don't know.
It's just hard because the overall question has to be, does Pokemon own the rights to these types of games? I mean, by the way, Pokemon has never made a game like this. Like this doesn't exist in the Pokemon world, and so they're suing based off of like the idea of what's happening. So do they own the rights to these like creature catching games? I forget what they're technically called, because outside of that, it's like, well, not only yes they do that, but there's like a whole crafting situation. There's like an open world. There's guns. You can ride them and shoot rockets off of them. It is very much not Pokemon in any sense, and so it's just difficult. But Nintendo has a lot of money, so I don't know.
Yeah, they got a lot of money and they have a lot of patents. And they got a lot of power when it comes to cracking down on these things. And I don't know if I should be more scared the fact they took so long to come out and of course this go public. But would I lose any sleep if Palworld gets away with this? Obviously not. I really did enjoy the game. I think if anything, it should spark some innovation on Nintendo's end of like, yo, you have a lot of possibilities to do things with your characters that you ain't been doing. All right. So for me, I'm going to come from a little bit of bias. I know there's a lot of Nintendo super fans out there. I enjoyed the game for what it was. It was a unique twist on, yes, obviously childhood me. When I saw those creatures, the first thing I thought about was Pokemon. Does that mean what they did was illegal? I don't know. We got to wait to see what else comes out about it. But I ain't going to lose sleep over it. I don't really got a guy in the fight, a pal in the fight in this one, you know?
Nathan Grayson quoted an article by Emmanuel, somebody. Let me look real quick so I don't get his name wrong. Myberg. And he quoted this article that says, Nintendo has, as I mentioned in my tweet, a legendary track record. I think they have never lost a lawsuit that they initiated themselves.
Oh my God.
So Nathan Grayson's tweet is not loving Palworld's chances here.
All right, so settlement it is.
Yeah.
Give them 10%, man. That's still a W.
Yeah, they made a ton, but then I guess the question is, obviously they won't be able to update or make anything else in the game. I think it's petty at this point from Pokemon or whoever decided.
The game is dead, man.
Yeah, like the game is way past it. Did they just wait until it like collected its collected enough
It's
of a check?
It's headline.
Yeah, so that they could really get a bag from this lawsuit and really prove a point. But for me, it just feels like Pokemon is being really punitive, or Nintendo is being really punitive in a situation where it's overall like this is, and people have said that this is bad for gaming. To have someone like Nintendo feel like they have this much power over a certain category of games, this would be like Call of Duty going after X-Defiant, right?
Yeah, I just don't know where that line is when it comes to the character creation, because I know when Palworld initially dropped, there were those debacles about character creation and where they came from, and interns being involved with sketches and so on. So let's just wait and see what happens in court. If they settle, they settle. Hopefully the proper people get paid if they do feel slighted or wronged. And I do hope Palworld continues to be a thing, because it's a great game. All right, a final recap topic for all of you guys. We want to make sure to keep you all informed where we've been traveling, where we've been going. This past week was crazy for me and Hunter as we went down to Texas. I almost said Dallas. It was actually Fort Worth for about 10 days for 2 separate events. We went down there for Rocket League Worlds, or RLCS, and we also went down there for Fortnite Globals, their global championships, and it was dope. We got to meet a few of you guys there, but it was fun. Back-to-back events in Texas.
Which one was better?
For me personally, we are big Rocket League fans of that community, and I think when it comes to ticket sales and venue filling out near completion, Rocket League was hard to beat. Rocket League is still an underrated esport. They sell 12 to 15,000 tickets, and by that grand final, that place is packed and looking beautiful. It is a great top tier esport, and I love Worlds every time we go. So I think I give the slight edge to Rocket League, but when it comes to like impressions and how our stuff did, Fortnite also did well because they got a lot of personality over there.
Yeah, true. There's a lot bigger names, I would say, over on the Fortnite side, as far as like the mainstream goes, or the mainstream of gaming even, and people more excited overall about it. But as far as like the in-person event goes, Rocket League is going to be hard to beat for almost any game outside of maybe like the biggest events for certain games. And so
yeah,
I think it was awesome. The crowd difference was crazy to see. If you go look at the Fortnite crowd, you have so many kids there, so many kids that their parents are bringing like a group of friends to the event, where you see these like 12-year-old boys just sprinting around the arena.
Bro, these kids are crazy.
Trying to break into places and like just being kids. And then you have the parents who are just there babysitting, have no clue what's going on. And so with that, you get a much quieter arena, right? Like none of the parents are cheering. They don't care. The kids don't even cheer that much, like they're just having fun watching Fortnite and watching Peterbot just dominate. Versus you go over to Rocket League and you have a bunch of, high school dudes, college dudes, all their girlfriends. You also have families. It's just like a really wide range of people who all play the game and are really excited to watch Rocket League. And it's really easy to understand. So even if you like brought your parents who knew nothing, I bet they were into it by the end.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Those kids are crazy. At one point they ran up to us and were like, "Yo, can we have your badges?" At one point we were in the basement. We were so close to the players. "Can we have your badge?" We were like, we can't do that, bro. And they just literally they sprint away. And there was other kids who would just walk. And the press area in this giant Dickies arena is pretty far off. Like it's on its own. You would have kids just walking into the press room, yell clicks, and then like walk away. So pretty crazy. Last thing though, when it comes to storylines, I will say the ending for Fortnite I think was better. You had the favored duo, that being Peterbot and Poyo, just dominating everybody. And then in Rocket League, we had G2 versus BDS, and BDS ruining our dreams like forever, always.
Yeah, that was brutal. By the way, I saw that Peterbot and Poyo have split up now already.
No loyalty in Fortnite, bro.
I know. Granted, if you're Peterbot, do whatever you want. And say he's supposedly going to be teaming up with Buka. So
yeah, it's nuts.
It'll be fine. But I feel a little bit bad for Poyo, even though he's richer than me at this point. And then as far as Rocket League goes, yeah, it was just a disappointment to the crowd. Everyone wanted an NA team. It's an NA major, NA Worlds, and so everyone wanted G2 to win. But we got Team BDS once again, who are
the French, man,
the villains of Rocket League and of us personally. But congrats to Monkey Moon for apparently being the GOAT of Rocket League at this point.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. But that's going to do it for our first ever G World podcast on the channel. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure to leave a comment. We will be replying to these comments and also featuring them in future episodes. If you guys have any stories for us to recap, make sure to leave those as well. But we hope you guys all enjoy. This is a great opportunity for me and Hunter, despite the difficulties with cameras, to get together once a week, just shoot the banter about these topics, and you guys get to see a bit more on the side of us as well.
Bye.
Oh, bye.